Oh, I saw a play last night.
Oh, you did?
Austin.
Oh, I was supposed to tell you that I didn't realize she was already there, but I guess that makes sense.
Yeah,
she's
played
playing
here last night. I guess she's playing tonight too at a private house party.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, she was doing some singer-songwriter thing.
Yeah, that was last night.
So that's what you went to. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know about that?
I just saw it from her social media.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah. But she didn't remember
awesome.
who I was.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, boy.
She was like, "What's your name again?"
Well, yeah.
I was like, "We did a podcast together."
Oh, that's right. You did.
I know.
Well,
That's funny.
that is pretty funny.
You can cut that out.
I don't know. I'll have to think about it if I want to.
Up to you. I mean, it's true, but I'm not trying to be mean to her.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
This, of course, is my sister that we're talking about.
She put on a good show, though.
Yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
I mean, she's a really good singer. So.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, people seemed into it.
Oh yeah, it was a good show.
It wasn't just her then? It was other people?
There was 3 singer-songwriters, and they each took turns singing songs.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did something like that in Houston, right?
I did at Super Happy Funland.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Thanks for going. I was supposed to tell you about that, and I just kept forgetting.
Cool. I mean, it's a nice place. I like that spot. Maybe I'll email them about us playing there.
Oh yeah,
it's a real high class spot. It's called Geraldine's. It's in the Van Zant Hotel, and it's.
I saw her there before. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
you saw her at this place?
Yes, probably 5 years ago. She played there.
It's a fancy spot. They have good cocktails.
Oh yeah, now that I think about it, that was why I went to Austin the first time.
Yeah, nice.
I forgot that was the reason, but yeah, that was like 5 years ago.
Yeah. I don't know if they're booked that night, but actually, I'll just pitch our duo show to them.
Okay. Yeah.
For that
works.
Saturday.
Yeah, it is swanky. Now that you mentioned that, yeah. But yeah, it seemed like a decent crowd. That was, I feel like most crowds are probably pretty amenable to music in Austin.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Except if it's a football game.
Well, that's like...
I've definitely done shows where there's a game on and the venue's like, you can't actually play until the game's over, which is kind of nice because a 3-hour set then becomes like an hour 45 set.
Yeah, exactly.
But then they'll be like, you have to start playing as soon as the game is over.
Right.
Like game off, music on, no space.
Nice. Yeah. Huh,
and then if the local team loses, then it's just like, man, this is going to be a bummer of a gig. Everyone's going to be in a bad mood.
Yeah. No, that's funny. Yeah, well, so should we get into it? What'd you think? So it's Oliver Sacks
cool.
again, our third installation.
I feel like he has too many stories. I'm getting to the point where like I'm starting to question, how does he have a story about everything he ever wants to talk about? Like he happens to know somebody.
Well, he's put out that you should contact him if you have an interesting, if you have an interesting thing, neurological thing. He put his, I think, contact info out there publicly for years.
Right.
I mean, he died in 2015, so
right.
You can't contact him anymore, Anthony. I mean, Antushka.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think for years he developed correspondences with, probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people. Right. Who would just write him about stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I'm sure, he would work out if he could put them in the book and, how much of their name and everything. But yeah, so we're reading Musicophilia again. We did chapter 9 and 19. And
I also did
10.
chapter 10, I think.
Yeah, I did it too. But that was the extra bonus if we had
bonus.
If we had time.
Yeah, I got through all 3. I did it. I did my homework.
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, that is the nice thing about this book is that the chapters are pretty short.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so, what it was about...
absolute pitch.
And then rhythm was 19, and 10 was the cochlea.
Yes.
So yeah, it's pretty interesting. Do we want to start with absolute pitch?
Sure. So absolute pitch, otherwise known as perfect pitch, it's a funny thing because there's a lot of people who aren't musicians or who are amateur musicians who think that perfect pitch means like you're able to hit a note perfectly. But usually what people are referring to when they say perfect pitch is the ability to identify a note by name just by hearing it. Right. And you might think that lots of musicians can do that. Most musicians can't. Most people can't. Yeah. Or most adults, it seems, after reading this. Most adults, at least, cannot just hear a note, boo, and name, that's a B flat or something.
It's 1 in 10,000, I think he said.
Right. So that's interesting. It's interesting that it seems like absolute pitch can be trained and developed in infants. And it also seemed like later in the chapter he was suggesting that actually there's some people believe that it is sort of natural to infants and it is adaptive in infants to have absolute pitch, and then perhaps it's lost as we grow up, as we get past 4 or 5 years old, and suggesting that it might even be maladaptive in adults to have perfect pitch, which I thought was maybe the most interesting thing to think about in the chapter. The idea that it would be useful for an infant to be able to identify pitches. And then I started thinking maybe it has to do with being able to sort of hear the tonal patterns of their caregivers very acutely so they know who's who kind of a thing, versus an adult, we're trying to understand language and everybody talks a little bit differently. So being too keyed in to something like, the specific pitches of something, rather than having the flexibility that, hi, how are you can be at any pitch level and we still understand it.
Yeah.
Maybe. I was just making things up.
I think, and he, of course, purported things like that too. And I think, though, it's tricky to get into using words like maladaptive versus it's just
I think that was his word.
No, I know that, and I think he even sort of spoke with some timidity on it because he was saying, like, this is just one hypothesis. Because the other way you could view it is that, so you start out with many dendritic spines. Infants have these things, dendritic spines, much more than adults. And then as we get older, we get fewer dendritic spines. And these, again, are sort of the areas where our neurons are actually making their synaptic connections. So you sort of have a general pruning event that occurs. So I also read what he was saying as more attuned to you have a tremendous ability to hear tones and potentially absolute tones as a child. But if you don't have like certain combinations of things, you're not going to retain it. Not necessarily because it's maladaptive to retain it, but because these pathways are going to get taken up by other things.
Sure.
So if you want to call that maladaptive, I suppose, but it doesn't mean when you say maladaptive, it feels like it means that absolute pitch people are lacking something that we don't have, and to my understanding, doesn't seem to be a clear thing. It's not like that, they, the people I've met with perfect pitch don't have some like glaring deficit elsewhere.
I have met some people with perfect pitch where it breeds a really strong inflexibility. Like they know a song to be in the key of G, and it's very irritating for them to hear a song in a different key kind of a thing. And that actually limits their ability to be better musicians because it makes them more rigid.
Sure. But I guess
that's
then
not,
we could get it.
I also know other musicians with perfect pitch who don't have that problem.
Well, and what's the survival benefit to being a good musician?
I don't know.
Well, but that's the thing when we get into terms like maladaptive, you know what I mean? So I guess a general rigidity.
In light of the rhythm chapter, it seems like there are some pretty useful and adaptive places for music in human flourishing and probably survival.
Yes. But in terms of language acquisition and all that, it's which is where a lot of the theories about where music comes from and everything like that. People with perfect pitch don't seem to lack an ability to learn other languages and stuff like that because they have this. It was even actually thought of as absolute pitch was kind of like a second language. So this is where I was going to also get into the fact that he brought up these interesting studies done with people from China that speak Mandarin versus English-speaking music, and specifically looking at two groups of musicians from each country. And Mandarin and Cantonese are much more tonal. And so what they found was a greater proportion, I think up to 60% of the Chinese musicians that were queried for this study had absolute pitch. And so it was thought that the fact that they had not only musical background, because that's the one thing you also kind of need, is you need to know what pitches are if you're going to have absolute pitch, right? So you need some kind of musical background.
But there's people with absolute pitch who aren't musicians at all.
Yes. But I think majority of them are. I think he was saying something about that.
Wasn't there the entomologist? Were they a musician?
I think they were. Yeah, you're talking about the Finnish guy? He wasn't a professional musician.
Right.
But he had musical abilities, I'm pretty sure.
Just as a side note, it's crazy that moths beat their wings at 46 cycles per second. That's really slow. Mm-hmm. That's lower than we can sing.
Yeah.
That's very low.
Yeah.
Okay. That's almost the bottom of human hearing.
Yeah, it just about is, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all of this just is to say, again, it shows how I feel really how I think about it is we all have the ability to have absolute pitch. Sure, I agree with that. But it's just if you, for whatever reason, some people make this more definite connection, and as it was shown, there's something specifically with the planum temporale, which is a part in Wernicke's cortex, basically, or Wernicke's area, rather, which is in the temporal lobe near the auditory cortex, which seems to be the component that's really important for absolute pitch. And if you strengthen these connections for whatever reason, then you get it. And if you are speaking a tonal language and you're a musician, then you're probably more likely to have it. Is kind of what those studies showed me.
Right.
Yeah, and then it also, it was talking about the guy who had a stroke in the anterior communicating artery, which is, in the frontal lobe, which supplies almost an inner hemispheric area. So, and it seems like the person that had a stroke there, so it was a composer who had absolute pitch and then had a stroke and lost that capability. The way that Oliver Sacks at least described it was that he was losing this connection between, it wasn't that he couldn't still actually make out pitches, it was that he was losing the interaction between what the pitch was, his thought of the pitch, and the pitch itself. Right. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it does make sense. I think it's interesting to think about the idea of a pitch like G sharp, and then the idea that somebody with perfect pitch is experiencing G sharpness. Right. In the same way that something has blueness or greenness or something. Because I can understand what that means, but not in terms of absolute pitch. So if I'm listening to a blues, the 4 chord has a 4-ness to it. I'm not hearing, I'm not listening to intervals moving up and down. It feels like we're in the space of the 4 chord. And then it feels like we're in the space of the 5 chord or the 1 chord kind of a thing. And it has to do with the affective content of that chord. But it's interesting that I guess I don't have that with something doesn't have G sharpness to it unless it's in some kind of context.
Yeah.
So it's hard to it's hard to imagine what that means with a pitch. But then the other thing I think is it isn't that almost everybody has some kind of pitch discrimination because we can tell if a pitch is really high or low, most of us. Something sounds high or low. And so we have some kind of discriminatory ability. A highness and a lowness are senses, right? It feels like it has a highness or it feels like it has a lowness. But we just don't zoom in to one pitch that well.
Well, last episode you said not everybody hears things as high and low.
Yes, I did. I'm talking about the way you and I and all the Americans and Europeans we talk to. Yes.
Right. I think it probably has to do maybe with that chapter 10. This is getting at a little bit of what they're talking about there, how there is some feedback between like the cochlea, the instrument that we actually hear music with, and the auditory cortex. There are efferent neurons that go back to the outer hair cells in the cochlea to actually modulate the hair cells to like boost up other frequencies so that we can hone in on stuff. And I wonder if that's not how maybe like it helps potentially to have more than one frequency playing at a time. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I mean, because pitch memory is different than absolute pitch, right? Because some people have really, really good pitch memory, where they can recognize something as an E because it sounds a lot like an E they just heard an hour ago or something like that.
Well, is that different then, though? I mean,
I think he said it was different, or I've read somewhere else that it's different.
Well, it's different maybe in the longevity, but in the short term, it seems to be the same thing.
It has a similar effect. But then I'm also thinking about color, because the way color versus pitch works is slightly different, because green is going to have a whole spectrum. There isn't a particular frequency or a particular set of frequencies that's just green. There's a bunch of different types of green. And, green fades into blue, fades into purple or something like that, right? But what's interesting is a lot of people with perfect pitch, they have a very narrow spectrum for something like G sharp, because they'll be like, oh, that note's flat or that note's sharp. So they're really pinpointed.
Yeah, no, I think it gets down to what he was saying, how, we have 3,500 hair cells and we have the ability to distinguish about 1,400 tones.
Right.
So that's going to be based off of the physical system that we have of hair cells. So that's what I mean is like, I think what I would wager is that a person with absolute pitch, his ability to distinguish a G sharp versus like whatever the like G natural, or whatever the smallest interval that they can distinguish would be the same as like a quote normal person's ability to distinguish those, even knowing them, because it's all the same hardware.
Right. It's just something about people with absolute pitch. Their brain assigns some kind of, or has some system for remembering and naming specific frequencies or spectrums of frequency.
Right. And I think it's, again, probably having something to do with the mouth and maybe vocal cords, because it's really interesting that the absolute pitch, the area associated with absolute pitch is Wernicke's area. Because so what you learn if you learn about strokes is that there's, I guess, 3 areas of strokes for speech deficits that you'll learn about. You'll learn about Broca's area, which is in the frontal lobe, the arcuate fasciculus, which is this path of neurons that connects Broca's area to then the third area, Wernicke's area, which is in the temporal lobe. And what this is basically, so what you learn is if you have a stroke in Broca's area, these people will basically, they can understand speech, but they can't form any words or sentences to discuss it. So like I don't know if you've ever seen somebody with a stroke that's had this, but it's like they'll get really frustrated because you can talk to them and they'll understand what you're saying, but they'll like try to speak and the words won't come out.
Sure.
Alternatively, if you get a stroke in Wernicke's area, then they will not understand speech, but they have fluency, so they can speak just basically gibberish or
weird.
Yeah, so they'll be speaking, but they won't make any sense. And then if you get a stroke in the arcuate fasciculus, basically you lose the ability to mirror like somebody else's. Like if I say dog, you say dog.
Right.
Anyway, you can't do that with a stroke there.
I see.
Apparently. But anyway, so it's just really interesting because I'm trying to think. So you have basically something about Wernicke's area is where I guess you would say meaning is about what a word it actually represents is no longer being connected with the actual motor cortex that's making the words, which is why it's like you have the ability to form words, but there's no coherency to it. Right. So, I'm just trying to think, I guess.
Well, so a single note. So somebody with absolute pitch is essentially assigning meaning to what what most people would just hear as a tone or a note. Out of context, it has no meaning yet. And so most people need other notes around it or something to be happening with it to give it meaning, versus somebody with absolute pitch already has meaning assigned to it.
Right. That's essentially the idea. And where that meaning comes from is an interesting one. But yeah.
This is where I'm wondering, this is where that maladaptive thing is. It's an interesting idea because in a sense it's a little bit of a weird thing to be assigning meaning to frequencies and pitches that are like out of context. Yeah. Even out of context of music.
Yeah.
Because the idea that something is a G sharp is also a funny idea to me because a G sharp is a musical element. And so a train going by is not necessarily a musical element.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it's going to have a dominant frequency.
Right, or a bunch of them.
Well, yeah, but I think there generally always is one frequency that you can pull out more easily in whatever it is. And yeah, I mean, and somebody with absolute pitch could conceivably pull out a bunch of,
Right. Well, what I'm saying is it's slightly strange to call it a G sharp. That's what I'm saying. Like a G sharp is such a musical idea. Like I don't usually call things cadence. Like I don't call the wind, a plagal cadence or something.
That's why I was saying that like true absolute pitch in the way that we're describing, I think does require musical knowledge.
Well, to call it a G sharp for sure.
Yes, exactly. But of course there are, and I would be curious, honestly, what this proportion is of non-musicians who get it.
Well, they just wouldn't know how to call it a G sharp, so we wouldn't notice it as well.
Right, probably. I know. Yeah, exactly. Because they just be like, that note sounds different than that note.
Right. And then we're like, okay. Duh, one's high, one's low. And they're like, no, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. How would you study that? How would you set up an experiment to test that?
Oh, you just have to get a bunch of people.
Maybe give them different names that aren't musical names. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you do it. Be like, call this one Antushka and this one Mr. X.
Right.
And this one plausible and this one deniability.
Right. Okay.
And then you just be like, is this plausible or this deniability?
Right. Yeah. Yep. Cool.
Yep.
So that's absolute pitch. Do you wish you had absolute pitch?
Oh yeah, I've wished it. Yeah, definitely. Those were always the cool kids in music school,
Right.
If such cool kids existed.
Right. Like Jacob Collier. Oh, you don't know him so well.
No, you've brought him up a million times.
Right. He can sing in different temperaments and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you love this guy. You've got a crush on this guy.
Yeah, he's so cute.
Admit it. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. All right.
Yeah. Which do you want to jump to?
All right, you want to do rhythm?
Sure.
And movement?
Yeah, so this one I thought was
I had
like
some questions or a couple bones with this one.
Yeah. I was thinking that. And also, it's like it just wasn't like it was. I feel like the main thing about it was music allows us to complete sequences.
Right.
And
it was a
the big
really good
takeaway.
sales pitch for music therapy, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because it was all about rhythm and how basically like some people who even lack anterograde memories, like the ability to make new memories and stuff like that, they can, if they have a rhythm of some kind or a song, they can actually, that can help them get from one moment to the next.
Right.
And so he brought up actually, I guess, probably the guy who he wrote the book about, the man who mistook his wife for a hat, who was suffering from some severe facial agnosias. And to the point, where you would show him objects and he couldn't recognize them. And I think he would have trouble doing things. Like procedures, he would lose track of where he was.
Well, especially if you can't recognize anything.
Right, but if he had a song going and he was singing a song, he could do the procedure.
How would he remember the song? That was my question as I was reading this. How is he remembering these songs?
Well, this is I guess the point that Oliver Sacks was getting at is that music is unlocking sort of a subconscious memory for us. Whereas, it's like just with like a piece, we've all been. You and I have been we've learned a Bach piece, and it gets to a point where you're not really it's hard to jump. Sometimes it's hard to jump to like a specific spot.
Yes.
But if you lose your place, then and you could just remember the most recent spot that you can remember, you can sort of get going again based off of just like this, then this, then this.
Yep.
And, and he's bringing up examples of how, like, the Iliad and Odyssey were probably recited by memory, and that was possible because they were rhyming and had rhythm and meter and stuff like that.
It's a cool skill.
Yeah, I mean, and he brought up, like, a brilliant student that I think he had or a correspondent had about a female student who, like, could remember really well because she would put things to song.
Right. I mean, it makes me think of 6th Street musicians in Austin or Broadway musicians in Nashville. And I mean, younger people use charts a lot, but the old style way of doing it is you're just up on stage and you just have to have a repository of hundreds and hundreds of songs in your mind. Right. And these old guys do. I mean, they know every Rolling Stones song. They know every Muddy Waters tune. They, just whatever. They know it all. Wow.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it's that. I mean, you think about lyrics, remembering lyrics.
Yep. It's not very hard.
Well, it's not hard if it might be hard to jump to a specific spot, but if you're like starting from certain.
Right.
Like the beginning of a verse, you can get to the end of a verse because it's just the sequence that you've memorized. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I thought again is he was, neuroanatomically pointing to, I think it was the dorsal premotor cortex, which is an area just anterior to the primary motor cortex, so the area that's innervating, like sending the motor information out of the brain. Mm-hmm. So again, it gets at this tight connection between the motor system and the auditory cortex.
Right.
And I think this is why we have this beat. What's it called? What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, just the beat. You could feel the beat in like your fingers and toes and stuff like that, and mimic it. And it's probably because this component in the dorsal premotor cortex is right next to the motor cortex, and it's keeping some kind of time of information that it gets from the auditory cortex.
Sure.
But I don't know.
I mean, I just take your word for all this stuff. I have no idea.
Well, this is just what
you
was
could
written
be
in the
just
book.
making things up, and I'd go.
I'm making up words right now.
In the same way that somebody with perfect pitch, I was thinking about this. You could trick most people that you have perfect pitch by just being like, F sharp.
Yeah.
Everybody would be like, whoa.
Until the one person with an instrument. It's like, wait a minute, that's not an F sharp at all. Yeah, but I don't know. So what were your bones with the chapter?
Let's see. So the first one, he's talking about relationship between motor and auditory systems. I'll read the quote and then I'll say what I was thinking. So the linking of auditory and motor systems seems universal in humans and shows itself spontaneously early in life. But as Patel wrote in his 2006 paper, there is not a single report of an animal being trained to tap, peck, or move in synchrony with an auditory beat, which I think is just not right.
Well, there's
birds that do that.
No,
they don't even need to be trained.
You didn't read the subtext, I'm pretty sure, because he talks about all these cases in the subtext.
The
footnote.
The footnote.
Yeah, there's a big footnote on this about how they're not sure that even though these animals can hold a beat,
right?
He's talking about synchronicity between each other. So, like, there's elephants that have been taught to hold a very steady beat,
right?
But they don't do it in concert with each other.
I see. Wait, what?
Yeah.
They don't do it in concert with each other.
Yes. So they do it in concert with themselves. So there is some kind of rhythmicity that they're, able to keep.
Right.
But then they'll be like, all right, this one goes done, 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 done. And then this one come every, half, done, done, done. Right. So it's like, you know what I mean? Or whatever. Like they can't make an orchestra, essentially.
Right.
And, yeah. And I think that's what he's talking about. Because doesn't he say in synchronicity?
Well, I can't seem to access the footnote with my copy.
But I mean, in the sentence, isn't that what he says?
There is not a single report of an animal being trained to tap, peck, or move in synchrony with an auditory beat.
Yeah, so that's, I think, what he's talking about, though. So with an auditory beat coming from anything, I guess. So you can teach it to do it. But yeah, he talks about, I agree, though.
I'm confused. So maybe I'm misunderstanding it. What are you saying he's saying?
Now that you say it, I feel like he does contradict himself in the footnote. Because, yeah.
Do you have the footnote there?
I'm looking for it. Because he talks about in the footnote, like this parakeet, for instance, on YouTube that, is known to dance to the beat of songs and stuff like that.
That sounds like an auditory beat.
Yeah, so...
Also, birds often tweet with regular beat patterns.
Yes, I think he talks about that too. Yeah.
Because in the quote here, Patel says, in every culture there is some form of music with a regular beat, a periodic pulse that affords temporal coordination between performers and elicits synchronized motor response from listeners.
Yeah, where is... So... I mean, the footnote, it starts off, it's very long, so I don't want to read the whole thing, but the evidence for musical abilities in other species is mixed. Mm-hmm. In Thailand, some elephants have been trained to strike percussion instruments and, quote, play together on their own. Intrigued by accounts of this, people looked, and they found that an elephant could play a percussion instrument with a highly stable tempo, but the other elephants in the orchestra struck their instruments in seeming disregard of one another without synchronizing to the auditory beat of the elephant. Right. Some bird species are known for their ability to sing duets or choruses, and some do keep time to human music. Patel et al. Have studied Snowball, a sulfur-crested Eleonora cockatoo, who had achieved some renown on YouTube for dancing to the Backstreet Boys. Yeah. So they found evidence of true synchronization to a musical beat by Snowball, who bobs his head and moves his feet in time with music, as they reported in their 2008 paper. When the tempo of a song is increased or decreased over a limited range, Snowball adjusts his movement accordingly and stays synchronized with music. So maybe he
it's not
added
just
this.
Snowball. I've also seen birds.
No, yeah, and he goes on to talk. So I feel like maybe he wrote that and then added this footnote in a newer edition or something. Because I agree. Actually, when I was reading that, I was also thinking, where is that quote? Is it before the relationship between motor and auditory systems?
It's at the end of that paragraph.
It's at the end of that
paragraph. It's the last sentence of that paragraph.
I'm not seeing it. Maybe our paragraphs are different.
Oh, yeah, maybe. What does your paragraph end with?
This linking of auditory and motor systems seems universal in humans and shows itself spontaneously early in life.
That period. Oh, maybe I have an earlier edition because I have another sentence.
What is the next sentence?
It's what I just read. But as Patel wrote in his 2006 paper, there is not a single report of an animal being trained to tap, peck, or move in synchrony with an auditory beat.
Right. So there was no single report, and then I guess in 2008 they went and
then there was a single
bird. Then they published the bird report.
I see.
So yeah, so he took that sentence out in my edition.
Nice.
All right, I'm glad we got to the bottom of that.
All right, cool.
And Mr. Sachs, apparently he does make mistakes.
Yeah. All right, I have another one. It's not really a bone.
It's not just a mistake either.
No, it's not. It's just. Yeah. I mean, it's not a mistake. This is where these like scientists are weird people.
Right.
This is obvious. Like, come on.
Well, again, a report. He's not saying it's not necessarily the case. It's just nobody had published.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, sure. That's fair. All right. The next one is another quote I highlighted a few paragraphs later. The perception of synchronization of beat, Patel feels, is an aspect of rhythm that appears to be unique to music. So this is another kind of strange idea to me, and cannot be explained as a byproduct of linguistic rhythm. It seems possible, he concludes, that musical rhythm evolved independently of speech. Maybe, but the idea that synchronization of beat is unique to music is kind of confusing to me because walking, as far as I can see, is a form of synchronization of beat.
Yeah.
And then there's other like more complex things that are sort of, you could say are synchronization of beat, like rhythms of waking up and going to sleep and rhythms of holidays and stuff. That's a little bit more abstract. But I think walking is a plain example because most people walk in with a pretty synchronized beat.
Yeah, I think. No, I would agree. I didn't buy any. I mean, because he talks about that theory and then also the theory that, that music came first, preceded language.
Oh, yeah, that was a fun one.
And then also just the idea that they evolved spontaneously. Right.
And I can imagine music or something like that coming first.
Yeah, so I can too.
Like singing, beating on things.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, and it gets back to this idea with absolute pitch that we're talking about, is before you confine, I guess, language to phonemes, and if it's a tonal language, to specific phoneme pitches, you have the entire human palette of tones to choose from. Right. But we do sort of hone in on certain rhythms and affectations within the language as we evolve. And then I think those pathways just get strengthened and other pathways fall to the wayside. Sure. And so I agree. I think it's probably more likely that we started off musical and whatever, singing all over the place until it got honed into sort of concrete syllables and phonemes and stuff and tones. And now do
you remember that song from the 90s,
I remember Bop.
It's like
No.
It really is a song. But it's making me think maybe that's what proto-singing was like.
Probably.
It's
yeah, a lot of
and then just do that longer.
Yeah. But you did it in unison first and then octaves, right? It was the same thing that the Notre Dame people went through.
Yeah, probably. That's probably right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. I guess I don't have any other bones. I have a comment when he talks about taking his patient to a Grateful Dead concert. I just think, like, who is this guy? He does weird stuff with his patients.
I agree. He's definitely got a closer, and maybe this is something we're losing in this, as corporations take over medicine, man, is that you did have tighter bonds with your patient, especially, I think, as a neurologist. Mm-hmm. You can see how something like having a patient who has certain hearing deficits like this patient did.
Right.
I think, what was it, that they couldn't make out music anymore? But yeah, then when they went to the Grateful Dead concert, he was taken up by the rhythm, and so was Oliver Sacks, by the way. And I'm sure they were taken up by other things.
It made me think of it's the thing you used to do where you'd like pretend like the music was taking over you. Whoa.
Oh, yeah. Steppenwolf style. It was
pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah.
That's what I was imagining Oliver Sacks doing. All of a sudden, Oliver Sacks became Mr. X.
No, I mean, Oliver Sacks is kind of fascinating because, I mean, I read his autobiography, and I mean, the dude did a tremendous amount of drugs, too. Nice. as a buttoned up physician, he did many more psychedelics than you would probably expect. Yep. So he's a fascinating guy, for sure.
Also, when he hurt himself on the mountain, how did he get surgery 48 hours after? I feel like the world we live in now is you have to live with a broken limb for like 3 weeks.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a good... I was thinking about all that and just how expensive it would be to fly from Norway back to England.
I mean, when I broke my hand, it was 3 weeks before I got surgery on it. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have a cast or I just had it in a sling for 3 weeks. And I just had to like not move it.
Yeah. No, I think it's a variety of things, connections. I mean, I'm sure he knew doctors in the UK.
Right. I remember Jimmy Dore was talking about that. He broke a rib, and he's like rich enough. He's got really good health insurance, and he had to wait 3 weeks with a broken rib for surgery.
Yeah. Well, with broken ribs, I mean, I guess he had something punctured because, I mean, if it's...
I think he did. And But they just gave him pain pills for a few weeks. Well,
I was going to say, with a broken rib, it's not like you put their torso in a cast or anything. It is just a it is just a wait and see kind of thing. And maybe they didn't see a puncture in the first x-ray they took of him.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I remember his story was that they scheduled the surgery, but it was going to be a 3-week wait.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it just depends. I mean, depends on your insurance and what the malady is and all that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, I was thinking just more about how expensive all that would have been, honestly.
Yeah, very.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I didn't really have anything else to say with that one either.
No, I don't think so.
And the cochlear one, I just kind of read it. It was also kind of like, there were some interesting things. It was basically talking about how if you lose, hair cells in the cochlea, which happens when we all get older, we have hearing loss. And I discussed how we more frequently lose the high frequency hair cells first because of their placement in the cochlea.
Yep.
And is talking about how that will actually affect the tonotopic map.
Nice.
Sorry. I'm having trouble talking. The tonotopic map, or tonotopic, however you want to say it, in the auditory cortex. So each frequency is actually mapped to a specific space in the auditory cortex. And what you'll have is adaptation as you lose signal from certain high-frequency hair cells from, like, damage. Other frequencies will move into that space in the cortex. And it was causing, for this one patient in particular, him to basically be hearing high-frequency notes, specific notes, as slightly sharp or flat.
It's
and
weird.
That was because it was like his cortex was moving. He was inferring what it should be in something.
Must
so
be
he
such
could
a
will
strange
it back.
Experience.
Yeah, so he could will the frequency back into place, but he had to really sort of concentrate on it. And he was able to actually make it get better by basically listening to more music, because it was, I guess, it was allowing his cortex to remap a little bit. So it just, it goes to show how, and he was bringing this example up, how plastic the brain is. And for instance, in examples where people like lose a hand, the aspect that was of the motor cortex that was involved with moving, your fingers and whatnot, is going to get rewired into something else and reappropriated. And I think this is probably what goes on to explain, like, when we talk about autism and stuff, and people think when we talk about somebody with autism, we think about not really being able to, like, pick up on social cues as easily. It's facial cues and stuff like that. But then they might have some other aspect that they're really good at, like whether it's math or something. And it makes you question, like, well, maybe they just didn't... they're using the space that we allocate for social cues to other things, like a math ability, like an ability to compute more and stuff. So that's the main takeaway I got from the cochlea stuff.
I think, I don't think I have anything to add. I don't have any notes on that one.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
What the heck?
I just read through it and went, okay.
Yeah.
Part of me feels like with this stuff, I guess it's maybe I'm just not as interested in the brain. I read it and I go like, okay, that's weird. That's neat. that's odd. Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't make as much of an impression on me as like the philosophical readings, I guess.
That's interesting. I was wondering if we should transition back to some philosophy.
Sure.
I don't know though.
I think it's a great idea. But what? What?
Well, I wanted to kind of go back to Nietzsche.
Okay. Sure. yeah, that's fine with me. What do you want to read?
Well, you got one more to pick.
Do I?
I mean, if you don't want to, you don't have to. But technically.
Well, we can talk out some ideas. The thing is, I think some of my ideas are probably multiple episode kind of things.
Yeah, that's okay.
So one that I wanted to do at some point was John Rawls. His theory of social justice, I thought would be interesting to talk about.
Okay.
Another one is Ayn Rand's For the New Intellectual, which is about 100 pages, so splitting it up into 3 I think would be good for me. Or we could read some Zora Neale Hurston essays. Those are a lot shorter, though.
Who is Zora Neale Hurston again?
She was just a writer, like Harlem Renaissance. She was a black writer from the early and mid 20th century, but she is also, like, libertarians kind of claim her a little bit too. She's sort of a proto-individualist. But she didn't hang out really with, she didn't call herself a libertarian or anything like that.
I think
she's just very sort of self-assured and self-focused. I don't know. She's an interesting writer. She wrote Their Eyes Were Watching God and other short stories and novels. But she's got some essays, too.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be down to do that next. It's just, I guess, a question whether we should do the Nietzsche first.
Let's do Nietzsche so that I can... Because I'm not prepared to say, like, which essays we should read or anything like that.
So I was, yeah, because I was listening back to our Nietzsche episodes. Those were fun.
Those were good.
They were also popular.
Yeah. Well, did you have something in mind?
Yeah, I was thinking of his untimely meditations.
Okay.
I made reference to these a few times.
Okay. Is that in the basic writings?
I don't think it is.
Okay.
So
right. I'll find it.
Actually, so what's in the basic writings? Do you have that?
I'm trying to pull it up right now. This is good radio, man.
Yeah, it is. I agree. Yeah, because the untimely meditations, the reason I thought that would be interesting is that was actually what apparently it was one of the things that Foucault wrote that really, or read before
neat.
He wrote.
That's a cool idea.
I think his first thing, the Madness and Civilization.
Nice. Yeah, let's see. We have Birth of Tragedy, 75 Aphorisms, Beyond Good and Evil. That's a famous one. I know that. I know of that one. Mm-hmm. The Case of Wagner, A Musician's Problem.
Yeah.
Ecce Homo.
Okay.
It.
Beyond Good and Evil would be a good one to do at some point. Maybe that could be like the next one. But yeah, I think if it's all the same to you, doing the untimely meditations, and we could just start with the first one.
Sure. It's called the Untimely Meditations.
Yeah. Here, hang on. Let me go grab it. Just pause for a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What edition are you on?
I'm. I don't even know. I'm on the Anthony M. Ludovici translation.
Okay. Okay. Because actually, if we're reading the same translation, that would probably be helpful.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because I keep seeing the Daniel Brizzanale. Here, can you maybe just text me the name of the edition you have? I'll see if I can find it.
Okay. Yeah, I would say maybe we do like half of the first one.
Okay.
I don't know.
I think realistically, for something like this, I'm going to max out around 30 pages.
Yeah. Honestly, in some ways, it's just like read as much as you can.
Okay. How long is the first essay about?
So mine doesn't have page numbers. It's quite
It's like old music scores where they don't have measure numbers, and it's like, why?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Stupid editors, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
I'll just do my best.
Yeah.
If I can get through it, I will. If there's an audiobook somewhere of it, I might be able to.
So I don't think there is. But again, I would say get through as much as you can. Okay. The interesting stuff was in the beginning, too, that I wanted to talk about, is talking about history and how we're sort of doomed to remember it. It's sort of a blessing and a curse that we have history.
Sure. Yeah.
Something we've talked about a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds like a common theme of everything. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So we got some Nietzsche coming up. We also have a show coming up.
What's that?
We also have a show coming up.
Yeah.
Our glorious return to Dog and Bone in Dripping Springs. On what day is it?
March 15th.
March 15th.
So it's not really coming up. It's like kind of coming up, but
but anybody who's listening to the podcast, put it in your calendar right now and come to Dripping Springs on March 15th.
Yeah,
it's a month and a week away. Yeah, right.
Book a flight.
Yeah, you have time. You have time to book a flight.
Book a flight during South by Southwest, but don't go to South by Southwest. Come
definitely don't.
Springs.
I wouldn't.
Yeah,
Southwest is miserable.
You want to come for the indie stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're where all the scene is actually being made.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right.
Is there anything else we want to cover?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
If we do, if we go back to the libertarian stuff, though, are you going to start posting on Reddit again?
I should. The libertarian stuff, yeah, I don't know. Did you happen to listen to the episode with RFK Jr. and Dave Smith?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Was it good?
No, it was too adversarial.
Really?
Dave Smith got really mad. It was no good.
Really? Oh, maybe I should listen to
Unpleasant. Yeah, you should listen to it. But the booking company I work with here in Austin, A&J Presents, is one of the people who runs it is the guitar player who I'm always subbing for. And he's having me do another one of these wedding gigs with this crazy band.
Yeah.
Because he's running an event with A&J Presents for RFK Jr.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I was like, I'd go to that, but I guess I can't if I'm
that's
a wedding gig.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll keep my political opinions to myself, but
I'm not even saying I like RFK Jr. I just think it's wild.
Yes, you are.
I'm not.
Yes, you are. No, yeah, you're right. No, but it's just I have a lot of opinions on all that.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
cool.
But you're not going to know them, man.
That's fine. Yeah. Well, probably everybody thinks I'm a huge RFK Jr. fan now. So
probably. And they'd be right.
Would they? Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we did it.
Yeah, we did.
All right. See you.
Cool. See you.